Alright, I wrote like 4 to 5 pages of script, made a PowerPoint deck on the plans, and then everything got data mined, and it made me realize I should just play the game instead, rather than trying to figure it out now with all the support gems, etc. I don't have a strong opinion on this data mining. It's going to be available soon anyway. I don't think it's all that significant, and I had a look at it just to confirm a few things. But rather than going deep and extensive and likely be wrong on so many levels, I will share with you my overall build idea instead. So let's dive in. A few things up front you should know. According to PoEDB, it's possible to 6-link every skill, and by default you have access to 9 skills. By default, each skill comes with 2 sockets for support gems. You can add more sockets using jeweler orbs. A lesser one provides 3, a regular one 4, and a greater one 5 support gem sockets. Before you think you'll be able to go completely nuts on the support gems, be aware you can only use a support gem once in your entire build, unless you play a specific Ascendancy, the Gemling Legionnaire, which I will not be playing. That severely limits your options, but limitations enable creativity. For summons specifically, they require spirit to be summoned, except the Hellhound, as Gazi tells us.
Loyal Hellhound. Every skill that you get from Ascendancy nodes are skills that you can link in support and turn into 6-link support. Well, Viperesk went down and confirmed that this little piece of dog shit doesn't cost any spirit to reserve. He is literally a free 6-link minion from the Ascendancy.
If you use permanent minions, which revive themselves, such as skeletal warriors, you can edit in the skill panel how many of those skeletons you want, and the more you choose, the more spirit you reserve. As a witch, you start with a scepter, meaning you start with 100 spirit and a summoning skill. By using gear, by picking passives, and by doing certain content, you can get more spirit. Apparently, every act rewards you with 30 spirit, meaning that once I make it to maps, I should have 280 spirit, at least. I also checked the passive tree, and there's at least one node that provides reduced spirit reservation. And finally, higher level minion skill gems decrease the reservation costs, allowing you to summon more minions. And recently it was announced that Bind Spectre didn't make it into early access launch, so we cannot use specters just yet. It's Infernalist, guys. I think it is the most straightforward minion Ascendancy, and I'm not looking to start my build making journey by creating hipster builds. I am more than happy if whatever I conjure is going to work until at least a few tiers into the maps. That is all I'm asking for. I think that should be doable, all things considered. The Infernalist comes with a minion of its own, the Hellhound, which I'm going to get first. And then I think I will be reserving some life and get that spirit, because more spirit is more minions and that's more damage. Spirit is effectively a damage multiplier. To me, the energy shield option is attractive too, depending a bit on how much energy shield you can get. Demon form isn't an option at the moment because it is bugged and it unsummons all of your minions. Another reason to choose Infernalist is that they have immediate access to passives that involve minion nodes, and they're closest to some notable minion nodes, for example the Spirit Reservation, because of where you start in the passive tree as a witch. I really don't want to travel for 20 levels and then do a respec on my first playthrough just to reach a minion node. That seems like a horrible idea. And then we get into the fun part, the skills. I'm going to divide this into a few chapters. One part of the build is permanent minions, and I'm going for the Hellhound and for ultimately the Arsonist skeleton. Before, I will likely take skeletal warriors if my spirit allows for that. The second chapter is temporary minions, and we are sticking to a fire theme with summon raging spirit, and before that at level 1 likely constructs from Unearth. The third part is self-cast or triggered spells. I need to do something too after all. And then the last part is defenses. I am aiming for 2 permanent minions, the Loyal Hellhound and the Arsonist skeleton. Let's start with the Hellhound. It's the Ascendancy node I will take first, because a free permanent minion is of course insane. You can support Ascendancy skills, so this is definitely a candidate for a 6-link. I'm thinking that I want this Hellhound to be tanky, because he takes 20% of my damage, but only of course if he is alive. And because he ignites nearby enemies, I'm thinking to leverage that ability and synergize with the ignite. I'm not necessarily looking at this guy to deal damage. Just a tanky, debuff sort of curse hound, that is enough I think. Then I want something to take advantage of those ignites. In terms of other permanent minions, there are two that synergize with that and with fire. There's the Arsonist, he throws bombs and he uses fire attacks and he can detonate other minions. There's also the Sniper, who can throw poison bombs which can be detonated. The latter is a bit more advanced I feel, so I'm going to keep it fairly simple at the start. I see the Arsonist together with Raging Spirits as my main damage dealers, so I will be using damage support gems on those that either synergize with fire or that do more damage against ignited enemies. I'm aiming for one temporary minion, Raging Spirits. The Raging Spirit buff is available from level 16 and it requires you to cast a fire spell in order to proc. We'll get to that fire spell in a bit. For the Raging Spirit buff, I think you have two options, depending I suppose on what we have found in terms of gear, our overall progression and experience we have so far with the game. Overall, this build can either focus on explosions and detonations, which I think is the most enjoyable playstyle, and in that case you would go for a build that's known as Popcorn SRS, meaning you slot in Infernal Legion to let the Raging Spirits burn themselves and others around them, and then you support that with minion instability, making them explode at low life for a portion of their life as fire damage. Or you make the Arsonists detonate them instead, which does cost mana, but I think it also deals more damage. And I'm imagining they can only explode once, but we'll have to see. The other route to take with this build overall is that you don't explode anything, but you just focus on pure fire hit damage and just create as many Raging Spirits as possible. A support that looks interesting in that regard is Last Gasp, which effectively doubles the lifespan of Raging Spirits, and it may even exceed their limit depending a bit on how the game counts all of this. These Raging Spirits don't summon themselves, however, and you can't directly summon them either. You need to cast fire spells, and for every hit you summon a Raging Spirit with a maximum of 5 per spell cast. So what I'm looking for here is a cheap spell with a short cast time with lots of projectiles or lots of hits to summon as many Raging Spirits as possible. I think there are a few decent candidates for that for these fire spells, and we don't care about damage. I don't plan to deal damage myself, I just want to summon and buff minions, and this fire spell is purely utility for me. There are a few self-cast spells, and I primarily am thinking about two of them. One is an offering, the Pain Offering, for 30% increased attack and cast speed and 38% more minion damage. Seems very good. The second is a curse, Flammability, reducing resistances by 32%, and if you support that with Heightened Curse, it goes to 40% reduced fire resistance. Your minions can decimate fire resistance and penetrate it too. I think it could be very good. Now we are getting into quite an aspirational part of the video, but whether it's constructs or Raging Spirits, I expect my minions to die a lot, especially if I explode them, of course. And there is a buff for 30 Spirit, which lets you trigger spells when minions die. I believe it works with a build-up, so every time a minion dies, it generates energy, and then once it hits a certain energy threshold, energy is reset and the linked spells are cast. I believe that's how it works. Assuming this is true, you have a bunch of options really. I could trigger the spells I previously discussed in self-casting, which would mean I really only have to cast fire spells and the rest of the build takes care of itself. That is a very interesting proposition, I wouldn't mind that at all. But you can also, I think at least, specialize in a specific skill and then still support that as yet another damage skill. It can't be a minion skill, however, but you could go, for example, Detonate Dead. It would fit the theme of exploding minions if we go that route, and it's fire damage, which is great, and it skills with corpse life, so that's at least something. It means I don't have to skill my own sort of spell damage instead, unless there's a good way to combine that, right? Maybe there's a good way to skill both minion and spell damage, like there is in Path of Exile 1. You may notice I pretty much completely lack defenses. I do have a few open skill slots still though. Partly the lack of defenses is because we haven't seen that many defenses, except for a few curses, and maybe instead of flammability I should go a defensive curse. I think we have that option regardless. I'll likely be wearing a shield, because you cannot dual wield scepters, but I'll have to check if I can cast all of the spells I want with a scepter. I'm not too worried about defenses as of this moment, primarily because I'm not playing the game yet. All in all, I think that with a debuffing Hellhound, a bunch of explosions and some self-cast buffs and curses, I'm going to have a great time. To me it sounds like a fairly balanced build, but hey, time will tell. I hope you had a good time watching this video. Let me know what you think, also let me know if you have any suggestions. Subscribe and like for more PoE solo self-found content, also PoE 2 of course. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. Love you all, see you soon, bye bye.